I've decided to download a new application because I couldn't get StreamYard, which is the platform I normally use to stream to LinkedIn, and then I use my iPhone to Facebook and my iPad to Instagram. I noticed that Restream was another option. I couldn't get StreamYard working today, so I've signed up to Restream. That's why I'm half an hour late trying to sort out the tech. I was trying to get onto a live with Alex Hughes this afternoon and just couldn't. It wouldn't recognise my settings on StreamYard. I think I've got a problem, technical problem. Anyway, I've set up a Restream and it looks pretty good. So I'm live, I believe, to YouTube, LinkedIn and Facebook. So I'd love to hear, if anybody's out there, give me a quick check just to make sure I'm not talking to myself. I do that a lot anyway, so it won't matter either way, to be honest. Today I want to talk to you about the 4 things. There are 4 things that are on my mind. Some work that I'm doing with clients over the last week, 2 weeks and beyond actually, but there are 4 things that come up on a consistent basis that are really, that clients find really valuable. Fairy on LinkedIn, thank you very much. Excellent. I'm not talking to myself. Not at the moment anyway. Thanks, Fairy. Really appreciate it. Hello, nice to see you. That's great. And so there's four things that are really valuable for me to kind of work through with clients. And the first one is a principle that I've covered before, but I'll cover it again because it's so vital. It's called contracting. And I work on the principle with clients that I contract at the start of every discussion. And it's a really valuable initial process to start any conversation. Nigel, thank you, Nigel, on LinkedIn. Great to see you. Good evening to you, Nigel. Thank you. Nigel, I've had a message from James Mason. I will be calling you. I've called him back. We're going to catch up. Thank you for the introduction. Sorry, a bit of an aside, having a private conversation on the stream. Thanks, Nigel. Lovely to see you as well. And you, Fairy, thank you both. So contracting is a really important principle. I wish I'd learned this years ago. But effectively, whenever I start a coaching conversation with somebody, a group or an individual, where I start with, can't hear me. Nigel, you can't hear me. Let me just check my settings. Okay, hold on. Audio input. How about now, Nigel? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? I wonder. This is like, it's loads of fun. I love it. Can you hear me now, Nigel? Don't ghost me, Nigel. Don't ghost me. I'm going to assume that I've sorted because I've just switched the mics from one setting to another. So I'm going to assume that you can now hear me. And I can actually see there's like a volume bar on my end here. It's showing me that I've got volume. So I'm assuming that we can hear me. Good. Assume you can hear me, Nigel. Good evening, Nigel. Good evening, Fairy. Thank you for joining me on LinkedIn. Appreciate it. And I should be streaming to Facebook as well. So hopefully both Facebook and LinkedIn are kind of hearing and seeing the live this week. So first principle I want to talk about today, I've got 4 things. First principle is contracting. And contracting is a really important principle. Whenever I work with clients, either one-to-one or in groups, I always start those sessions with what I call a contracting discussion. And that is, sound's still gone, Nigel, is it? Sound has gone. Okay. Let me try something else. Microsoft audio input. How is that, Nigel? How is that? Got me back. Right, okay, I'm back. There must be, I think there's a delay. There is a delay. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that. Got you back. Okay, good. So contracting is a principle that basically enables you to start and frame a conversation. And when I'm working with clients and client groups and teams, we always start with a contracting conversation. With the frames that I talk about, the principles I talk about, first is confidentiality. Giving someone the confidence that what you talk about will remain confidential between you, because that just gives people that sense of freedom, security, and safety that if you're having a conversation and they know it won't go any further, they feel more confident to give you deeper insights, to share things that are more personal, perhaps things that are real challenges for them. And I do this with clients. I would advise this in a sales capacity or in a leadership capacity with your teams. So confidentiality first, so that you create this safety in the conversation. Second is about thinking about two things. One is challenge, your ability to challenge that person in the conversation, so that if you're hearing things that you know either aren't true or are limiting beliefs or are things that actually aren't completely accurate from that person, there might be excuses, there might be reasons why things haven't happened that actually aren't real. They're just things that have come up. And our ability to agree in advance that when we hear that we will challenge it opens the door to us being able to do that in those conversations. So confidentiality, challenge. And then the second part is about support, because challenge without support can lead to high anxiety, stress, and create a negative balance in the relationship. So challenge combined with support gives people that reassurance alongside the high challenge. And it's a bit like the pedals on a car. You need the accelerator and the brake. It gives you the both kind of components. And challenge allows you to accelerate. Support maybe allows you to brake and back off a little bit when you need to. But I've found that that's really valuable. And then the final piece is intention. What's the intention of the conversation? Is it should be about helping that person to achieve goals, to perform at a higher level, to meet their needs more successfully, or to create value in the relationship. So if you think about contracting, is confidentiality, it's challenge, it's support, and it's intention. What's the intention of the conversation? So it's like CCSI. And I've found that as a principle with clients has been really impactful. And actually I start to kind of that creeps into a lot of my conversations now, so that I tend to find that I can have much more meaningful discussions with people. They'll tell me things that perhaps they wouldn't feel confident to do so in the past. And if I could go back and work with myself as a younger guy in sales and leadership positions, this is a principle I would have taught a long time ago, because I think it would really have made a positive impact on me as a leader and as a high performer. So I'll share it with you because I'd love to have learned it earlier in my career. And so contracting creates this frame of reference, and I would say get into the habit of it. I do it at the start of every conversation. It's really valuable. The next 2 points, you'll have seen them on the LinkedIn Live. One is the listening perspective, and I keep going back to listening. Because it's such an important skill, and so many people struggle with it. And I think one of the reasons we struggle with it is because of the amount of noise that goes on in our kind of social spheres, in our lives, in social media, in relationships, and as humans, when you think about it, listening really can be considered quite unnatural, because we are inside out people. We're not necessarily outside in, so we like to tell people what we're going through. We like to either keep it all inside or let it out. And you'll notice very often with conversations that you have with people that either you or they, whenever there is a topic. So if I say to somebody, "Oh, I've been working with clients this week," someone says, "Oh yeah, I've been working this week," and you end up not having a meaningful conversation. It's like tit for tat, and that principle is a block to listening. It stops you from listening because you're constantly thinking about yourself and then overlaying it onto whatever the other person said. And listening is such an important skill. It does take a lot of cultivating to get it right. And there's a couple of principles that I teach. One is the 3 levels of listening that you may have heard of before. And that's about deepening your listening and going to another level. But it starts with reframing your perspective and parking yourself and focusing on the other person, so that you really tune into them and you start to engage them and you really want to listen to them. So it's quite an important skill, but one that's very often overlooked. If you're in a sales position, learning to do that with your customers is vital. because you won't be able to sell unless you can really tune into the other person. If you're in a leadership position, it's vital, because you won't have that connection with your team members, and you won't have the credibility if you're not listening and really understanding what they're doing. So it's such a vital skill to develop, I'd say, in any role that you're in, but also from a humanistic perspective as a person. Learning how to listen more intently is really important. It can be really respectful. I think, my view on it is it's the ultimate respect you can pay to someone, is to truly and deeply listen to them. Okay, so that's listening. The second tip on listening, so one was reframing your perspective, the 3 levels. The second was actually starting to repeat key words that other people are saying when you're in conversation with them, and almost kind of get yourself to a point where you can do it like a mini summary. So did you mean this? Is this what you said? Or is that? Or just repeat the words. And once you start to cultivate that as a habit, it really starts to really connect with the other person. They feel listened to and properly heard. And from your point of view, it reinforces what they said. So it actually makes your memory better. So it can be a really valuable principles, listening and really tuning into the other person, and that summary, mini summary, repeating key words can be really valuable. But it's a habit. You have to form it, right? You have to form these new habits. And then the other point, listening and questioning are I see them as very closely linked, and I would cover listening before questioning, because if you ask good questions but you don't listen, then why did you bother asking the question in the first place? So you have to have the two connected. Listen first, then you can go to questions. And I would say, if you think about questioning, most people will unconsciously, without realizing it, they will default to closed questions. And closed questions are, one of the main reasons a lot of people find themselves in stilted, short conversations where they feel a little bit uncomfortable, because they're asking closed questions and wondering why they're not getting more information, either from a customer or a team member or a family member or a partner or a child, And sorry, I've got a cup of tea on the go. But if you were thinking about, if you say to somebody, "Are you all right?" Yes or no. If you ask someone, "How are you?" or "How was your day?" or "How are you doing?" or "What have you been up to?" It's a completely different question. It's not the same question. And we very often think that we're asking open questions, and we're not. So just to reframe it and understand it, what's the difference between a closed question and an open question, can be really, really powerful. And I always teach this simple principle. It's almost too simple, but it absolutely works. I'm a simple guy, so the simpler the better for me. Just start the question with what or how. And as soon as you do that, start the question with what or how, the question naturally will flow and be open. And there aren't very many questions, if at all any, that cannot be restructured so that you start them with what or how. I'd say it's really, really important. Good evening, Sam. Sam on LinkedIn. Thank you. Nice to see you, Sam. I'll give you a wave as well. Thanks, Sam. So I'd say, remember that there's 3 principles we talked about. Contracting, to give yourself that frame of reference with the other person, to create a framework around the conversation, a principle. And I like to think of it as an anchor point, so that once you've had that conversation about the agreement that you've got with that person, you can use that to keep referring back to as and when you have more conversations, or you want to hold that person accountable. It's really, really valuable. Haley, good evening. Nice to see you. Thank you, Haley, on LinkedIn. Thanks, Haley. Thank you for watching. So contracting first, put a frame around the conversation. Listening, making sure that you're cultivating your listening skills, because it's a difficult skill to develop. It's not natural, it's unnatural. It's outside in stuff, not inside out stuff, and we're inside out beings. Questioning, and remembering your questioning structures, and really thinking about how that works in terms of the structure. Open versus closed questions, open versus closed, and those simple principle for open questions: what or how. If you've got any questions about this on LinkedIn or Facebook, do let me know. If there's anything I'm going too fast or too slow, let me know. or if there's anything you want me to clarify, I will happily do that. Just drop it in the comments and I'll answer anything that comes up. Final area I want to talk about is, so it kind of builds on these three principles: contracting, listening, questioning. These are the key principles that I tend to revisit with a lot of my clients, because fundamentals, whenever we get unstuck or performance starts to slow, one of the things we have to go back to are the fundamentals. Are we getting the fundamentals right in the business? And with sales teams, with leadership teams, usually some of the fundamentals, like, are you having contracting conversations so that you can really challenge and support your teams to the highest performance levels possible? And very often people aren't. Are you listening to what's really happening? Are you tuned into the other person, or are you driving your agenda too hard? Very often it's not. They're not listening. We're not thinking about the other person. We're driving our own agenda. Are you asking good quality questions so that you're getting to the root cause of what's really going on within your organization? Are you asking what or how questions, or are you just saying, have you done this? When will you do this by? Are you going to pick up your performance, rather than actually kind of getting clear about what's really going on, exploring, opening up, and really helping people to get to that next level of self-awareness so that we can move forward and drive performance from there. So they're the three principles. And then finally, they all underpin, hold on. I've got a question from Sam. Good question, Sam. So Sam's question is, I've got a question. What do you think is the most important part of the contracting process? What do you think is the most important part of the contracting process? So I would say, Sam, it's a good question. If you think about the process, first is kind of trust and credibility. So if somebody wants to have a contracting conversation with me, and I don't feel like I can trust them, or that they're credible in what they're going to say, then I might agree, but not really buy in. And if I agree and don't buy in, you won't get the depth of the conversation with me. Alternatively, I might disagree. So to trust, you have to build that relationship of trust. I would say if you're using contracting just as a way to get more information without truly trying to use it as a way to deepen the connection with somebody, you're going to struggle. So I'd say that authenticity and trust as part of the contracting process is the most important. It's that initial, actually, is this person genuine and authentic? And Sam's worked with me on a couple of programs that we're doing with some clients of mine. So you'll remember this, Sam, from our communication mix discussion. So when we remember that, the communication mix, the amount of kind of communication that is received when we're talking to somebody, 7% are the words, 38% is the tonality, pace, pitch, all that stuff, and 55% is the body language. So what that says is, if you're not genuine and authentic in that approach with the contracting process, it doesn't matter whether you think the other person will buy in. If you aren't genuinely trying to support and help them and make that an authentic discussion, then they won't buy in anyway, because they'll sense that you're not sincere. So I would say, perhaps it's not process, perhaps it's principle. What's the most important principle as part of that contracting discussion? Authenticity, I would say. Authenticity and trust in the relationship. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate that. Matt, great to see you. Thanks for joining in the live. So Matt, hi, Justin. I've had some important, difficult conversations with staff over the years regarding contracting. It's been so important for accountability, responsibility, and also trust both ways. Not always work, but more so than not. Great. Thank you, Matt. That's real live experience right there. And that contracting discussion, really appreciate you sharing that, Matt. It's not an easy thing to admit. It's kind of work, but not. And I think I'd agree. It's the thing is, if you do it and you're the one that's committed to that contracting discussion, and you know that you're doing it for the right reasons and to support and help that other person, as you've experienced, Matt, not everybody is going to give you the commitment that you ask for. But one of the things I found that works really well is that even if they don't then perform, at least you have, I refer to it as an anchor point. You have an anchor point in that contracting discussion to loop back to be able to say, we've agreed these performance standards, principles. We've agreed that this is that if we don't, or if I don't see this level of commitment and performance from you, that I will hold you to account. I'll talk to you about it. And so this is that discussion. What it means is that you can bring that topic up without any fear, because you've already had the earlier discussion about the fact that you would do that and that the other person had committed. And that for me is the biggest benefit. It helps with performance, high performance, help your high performers level up. And with any low performance, it helps you have those conversations much more authentically, much more quickly, and without the awkwardness. I think that's the big issue that I find. Even with very senior people, they can find that discussion really awkward. And contracting reduces the awkwardness for both parties, because you open the door to the conversation about it. Sam, thank you. I love that, principles over process. Yeah, there are times when process is really important, but I think with contracting, it's less process oriented, more principle based. It's a really important principle. Thank you, Sam. Glad you like it. Thank you for the comment as well. So the final topic I wanted to talk about was why we should take a coaching leadership approach. Why should we take a coaching approach? Well, I've explained 3 kind of key steps or principles as part of that coaching approach: contracting, listening, questioning. In my leadership experience, having run large sales teams, large business teams, one of the things that I probably learned too late in my career, I often say this, I'm not as fast a learner as I wish I was, but one of the things that I found through experience, remember what experience is. Experience and good judgment comes from making mistakes, and mistakes are caused by poor judgment. So you kind of got to go through that to get to the experience and good judgment. But I've had plenty of that myself. And one of the things I noticed was the more I could hold myself in a coaching leadership style. And what that means is not to meet people's requests for information, for support, for help, for decisions, not to meet that with answers, but to meet that with a genuine curiosity and ask questions and listen and help, almost become an explorer with the other person. Just ask the questions of them rather than give them the answers. And there are times when it doesn't work, where you have to give people information. But for the most part, you can actually be surprised at just how effective taking a coaching approach is. And I had an example recently where I was working with a client, and we were talking about a topic. I won't talk specifically about the topic, but they said, I asked them a question about it, and they were kind of stuck in an area. I asked them a question: what do you think you could do? And they said, well, I was going to ask you that, Justin. And I said, well, I've definitely got some ideas, but before I do, let's just explore what you were thinking about doing. Just tell me a bit more about that. And that the client came up with things I would never have come up with, not in a million years. And if I had taken them at that point down a path or in a direction that I wanted to explore through giving them insights or telling them things, they probably would never have got to the outcome they got to. I mean, I was asking questions and sitting and exploring for a good 10 minutes. So we were really opening up their creative thinking, and you can't do that without taking a coaching approach. So what I've found it does for people is it gives them this inner resource. It starts to build their own confidence. They start to look inside for answers rather than keep coming to the manager or to any SME, subject matter expert. If you can kind of help them to keep cultivating it in themselves, asking them questions, exploring, it can be really powerful, really valuable. And if you think of leadership positions, one of the roles of leadership is to make sure the organization remains healthy, to make sure that people grow and develop, and is to make sure that there is a succession path for people that are looking to develop their careers in an organization. And the best way to do that, the most optimal style as a leader, is that coaching approach, because you'll achieve all of those things through those conversations with people rather than telling them what to do, because you'll create dependence on you, which might feel good in the moment, but long term you hamstring yourself to being stuck as a key decision maker or an action taker in your business. And it does take quite a shift. I remember very clearly one of my approaches was as a pace setting leader. I was active, dynamic. I was I had a high output of work, and I had high standards, and I wanted people to keep up. But I needed to change, because if I kept up that approach, one, I was becoming flooded with work, constantly pulled on for decisions. People kind of start to then see you as the go-to person, which isn't a bad thing. But when it's your team looking to you for continuous answers, if you keep feeding them with the answers, over time you kind of almost run out of steam yourself, and you run out of capacity. So you've got to be able to make a different approach, change the dynamic, and take a coaching leadership style in those situations. So that I wanted to share those because it was useful for me as a leader, having had those experiences. It's useful now for my clients, and hopefully you've also found this useful as part of our discussion today. So thank you for the questions. Appreciate that, Sam. Appreciate your input, Hayley and Matt. Really good discussion. Thank you. I am intending to be back every Thursday evening live at 5. So that's the plan. Live at 5 every Thursday. Today was 5:30 because I had some technical issues. I've had technical issues in the last week. But I'm now on Restream, as you'll see from the logo on the top right-hand side. So it looks like that's going to work much better. I was on StreamYard and it's been giving me some problems. So we're now on Restream. I will be back live next Thursday at 5. So we're coming up to the hour. It's nearly 6 o'clock on a Thursday. I wish you all a fantastic end of the week. Have a fab Friday. The weekend is almost here. I can almost see it on the horizon. So I hope you have a great Friday. Have a fab weekend, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you next Thursday live at 5. Take care. See you then.